Hello everyone, and welcome to the fifth public FoodSHIFT webinar. My name is Christian Bugge Henriksen, and I'm the coordinator of the FoodSHIFT 2030 project. In the FoodSHIFT 2030 project, we are working on transforming the European food system towards a low carbon circular future with healthier and more sustainable diets. And an important part of this transformation is to educate our children to become a new generation of food citizens that are empowered to make the best decisions for their own food consumption and also influence the way the food is produced, distributed, and consumed in the food system. So therefore, I'm very much looking forward to sharing with you some of the activities on food education that we are working on in our Greater Athens lab, in the Municipality of Copenhagen, and in the United Kingdom. For now, I would like to hand over the word to Emily Norford from EAT, who will be chairing this webinar.
Thanks, Christian, and welcome everyone. I'm really looking forward to this webinar. Food behavior is often something ingrained in us and shaped in our upbringing. And we all know the meals we eat can be part of our culture, our family, and our identity. But there's often a lack of awareness behind these eating habits. People aren't very sure where all of their food comes from and what its impact is on our health and the health of our planet. So as Christian mentioned, educating children on food is a really great opportunity to help an emerging generation develop good eating habits and set the course for a more sustainable future. So really looking forward to welcoming our speakers today and hearing about several initiatives educating children on sustainable food consumption in Athens, Copenhagen, and the UK. So you can see the agenda here. First, we'll hear from our colleagues in Athens. Then we'll hear about the food school experience in Copenhagen. And then we'll go to London and hear about the School Food Matters initiative and also hear from some of the students at a local high school. We'll also have plenty of time for a panel discussion with questions from all of you in the audience. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps for the FoodSHIFT project. So just a few housekeeping items before we get going. Just so you're all aware, we are recording this webinar. The recording will be available afterwards on the FoodSHIFT 2030 website, so you can listen again and share with other colleagues who might be interested. Please feel free to use social media to share your thoughts on the webinar and get involved in the discussion. Also, please use the Q&A function for questions that you would like to direct to the speakers and the panelists, and use the normal chat function for technical issues or just other general topics that you would like to bring up. And then finally, there will be simultaneous Greek translation. If you would like to listen to the webinar in Greek, or if you're having trouble hearing it in English for some reason, there's an interpretation button at the bottom right-hand side of your Zoom screen. So you can use that to select the language that you would like to hear. But all of the presentations will be in English. So I think that's all from me. Please do use the chat functions and the Q&A function. And I'm really pleased to introduce our first presenters, Katerina and Ioannis from Athens. So you have 15 minutes, over to you.
Welcome everyone. So my name is Katerina Riviou. I work in the Research and Development Department of Ellinogermaniki Agogi. Ellinogermaniki Agogi is a private educational institution. We are located in the suburb of Athens with around 2,000 students from kindergarten up to upper secondary school.
Oh, sorry, Katerina, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but it seems the sound is a little bad from your end and there's some interference. Maybe your speakers aren't plugged in far enough, or if you could check that quickly so all the audience can hear you. I can't hear you now.
Now, does it work? Is it better now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Emily. So a little bit to introduce Ellinogermaniki Agogi. It's an educational institution with around 2,000 students. from kindergarten up to upper secondary school. And in our department, we have a participation in several European projects, such as FoodSHIFT. And now I'm going to tell you a few words about our role as the Athens FoodSHIFT Lab coordinator. We are, in principle, very much interested in the open schooling model and the integration of research into education. So you can find more information, or you can contact me later, since we don't have that much time. But actually, just to give you the general framework, and then my colleague Ioannis will elaborate further in an initiative that we are involved that has to do with childhood obesity through the use of big data. So in the context of FoodSHIFT, that as Christian mentioned, the goal is to transform the food system. We are participating in this framework and trying to address the three challenges with the operation of the different labs and supporting citizen-driven innovation. And we are happy to be leading the Open School Lab along with the other 8 labs that exist in different areas around Europe, each one having a little bit of different focus and addressing the themes that have been commonly defined. Now going specifically in our lab and the themes that we are, there seems to be an issue with the slides. So here our goal is to explore the approaches and really apology about that. So here, our goal is to explore new approaches for overcoming the divide between consumption and food knowledge. And our goal is to reconnect young people with the land and open the dialogue between schools and food-related actors. We want to have healthy students and to empower them through hands-on learning opportunities. We will have some summer courses and teacher training activities and workshops, and strengthen the link between urban and agricultural communities. The final goal and the final step is to work towards food waste prevention in the school operation itself. That means the school canteen and the school kitchen. The approach that we follow is that we work through different multidisciplinary projects that are available online. And you can see there are some links also. You can find these resources available online as lesson plans on the Open Schools for Open Society repository. I have the links available there, and you will have the opportunity to see these activities. Students work along with the teachers also in the context of internal and external contests. And for example, here you can see the project that they have been working on. Well, it's really strange the way that the slides go on. Anyways, so we have participated in a national contest where students could develop a healthy snack box and got awarded for that. Here are the links of these activities that are available in teacher networks, so they can see them and they can share their own resources. And also we do, in collaboration with external actors, webinars for students in order to see the research findings in the fields. Moreover, there is a journal where students can publish their projects and their activities for other students to read further. And we have done in the past, and also in the context of FoodSHIFT, we will implement teacher training activities in the fields of the school gardens and other related activities. We have been active and also in the COVID area, because we think that nutrition is a really important topic also when schools are closed and operate in an online mode. We try to be updated with recent developments regarding food waste, etc. So we are working towards integrating these findings into the school operation and education itself. So this is more or less the introduction. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague Yanis, who will present more regarding the initiative that we have been involved for childhood obesity.
Okay, so hello from me. This is Ellinogermaniki Agogi. I'm a researcher. I'm talking to you while I'm Greek. I'm talking to you from Stockholm, Sweden. And we have worked together with Ellinogermaniki Agogi in another EU project, the Big Data Against Childhood Obesity project. What's that project? I'll go a little bit quickly. We have a lot of partners across Europe. I'm not going to cover in detail. What is of interest is that we are collecting data from schools across Europe, with the main volume coming from Sweden and from Greece, north and south, as you see. Going forward, I just want to tell you that Big O has now a system that's fully functional. We've been doing this for 4 years. We are almost finished now. We collect a lot of data from specialized apps we did. But in this case here, I will mostly focus on the meal pictures. And in general, our own attitude towards this is that Big O collects a lot of data from a lot of schools, but we want to return back to the schools in order to help them for their educational processes and to support school projects. And that has been the way we did this throughout. So we did a lot of school projects across Europe, and we have collected the dataset from more than 5,000 kids, which has been quite challenging now with COVID pandemic, and it has slowed down obviously, but we're very happy with the results. And from our side as scientists, what we care about, or what our main goal with this is, that we want to characterize parts of the areas of the maps for different cities in Europe, right? So you can see here some map data as we visualize them. But from the side of the school, we have also created school portals where the school can come in, register their classes, manage the students that participate in projects that are supported by Big O. You can see a screenshot here. The interesting thing for this session is the pictures, for example. And what we have done is we have created an integrated visualization. What you can see here in this part, it is a class that has been eating for a couple of weeks. I don't remember, 1 or 2 weeks earlier in Ellinogermaniki Agogi. And you can see here from the metadata of the pictures when their breakfasts happened, when did their lunches happen, and the dinners and their snacks and their drinks as well. You can also see the pictures of the foods, and the teachers have access to that or other data sets that they can request from the project. We have an app that has an integrated fashion where the kid take pictures and they also can annotate themselves what's on the picture, and we have a reward system letting the kids know when they are passing some goals for data contribution, because we are doing this in the setting of citizen science, right? And what have we managed to do that? Initially, that was not our main goal, but we have seen that the kids responded excellently to giving us pictures of their meals. So we have collected more than 100,000 meal pictures from these kids, quite a substantial data set. Around 10,000 pictures come from Ellinogermaniki. And this is from Ellinogermaniki. There are a couple of months in 2019. And here I can show you a little bit very quickly how the meals are distributed throughout the day. Maybe the interest here is the dinners are quite late during the day, and you can see also the snacks, that they mostly happen at the tail end of the day after they return from school, at least the ones that they report. There is a certain bias to this type of data collection. All right. We can then take this data and compare them across school and provide them to schools in order to support their projects. So you can see here dinners from Sweden, the upper part, and dinners from Athens. Comparable populations, comparable ages, but we can see a time shift. The kids in Greece certainly eat later during the day. In here in FoodSHIFT, that I'm very happy to be, maybe we care a little bit more about the content of the food. So what do? We have the data on the maps, and here we can see from our GPS when the kids enter places that we know that are fast foods, all right? But then we can look at the pictures and we can identify specific type of meals. So in this case, in Stockholm, we saw that kids leave the school grounds and they go and eat a lot of fast food. You can see that it's quite obvious in the picture. Of course, this is a selected sample so that I can make a point, right? Not all the pictures were like that, but also we can do this for the school itself. So we can look at the pictures in Greece. These are from Athens. And I can give you some outcomes because we have done this for some time now, so I can give you some. So what we saw in Athens population for 2 months, we can see that quite a few of the meals, close to, this is every meal that has happened. Quite a lot of those have some type of vegetables and fruits inside, but there are quite a few that have obvious meat products. And then if we go a little bit deeper and we look only red and ultra-processed meats, we can see them in around 20% of the eating events. But these are eating events. This is everything. There are sweets, snacks, and all that. If we look at lunches and dinners, we see that these percentages go up. Quite a lot of them, again, more than half, have a component, a significant component that's vegetable, but they also, quite a lot of them have obvious meat products, close to half of them, and 1/3 has also have red and ultra-processed meats. There are some meals that have only vegetables, but they might have cheese, for example. And if we go a little bit deeper for that as well, we can see that the actual meals that we can identify with a certainty, not all of them can be identified just by looking at pictures. We have dietitians that go through this data, but some of the meals are only vegetable meals, but quite a lot of them have product meats, animal products, even if they are not obvious meat products, right? But then we can also do that across countries, and we can look a little bit differently. So here we see that, I will go through this quickly, we don't have time, and you can ask me afterwards. But in Sweden, for example, the average meals for a very comparable population, there are quite more, at least in this sample, quite more meat products in the Swedish diet for a comparable population of students. And you can see the significance up here. And that's maybe something that we need to consider. Finally, I will talk, we have some plans that didn't pan out. We wanted to create, having this system, and we can monitor the population. We wanted to make the schools being the hub for giving out fruits. And we ran some awareness campaigns as scientists. This didn't happen because of COVID. But instead, I can talk to you for 2 slides what happened with COVID. You can see here in the map system, quite obviously, as the quarantine happened, the physical activity of the population goes down. And if we look a little bit here about when snacking happened, we can see upper side, this was before COVID, that was towards the end of the day for snacking. But during COVID, eating spreads out throughout the day. This might contribute, correspond to more frequent eating. We cannot say this for sure from this type of data. But a positive message to finish this up, based on what the kids said, we haven't analyzed this picture, we are doing that now manually, but based on the annotation of the kids themselves, we can say that the snacks during COVID were, more of them are home prepared. There are less sugary snacks inside, and I'm talking only for snacks here. We have this data for meals, just for brevity. And there are more fruits and vegetables that are being, percentage-wise, that are being consumed during COVID. Maybe because the parents are there and the kids are there and there is more control. And always remember that this is before summer in Greece, right? Where the availability of fresh local produce is quite high in this case. That's about it. that's how I usually finish my presentations. When it comes to pictures, there's a kid that sent us a picture. It says, you know, I took a picture of a thing. I always forget to take pictures of my food. I'm sorry. So we have to kind of filter this type of pictures out when we do this analysis. And I want to thank you for having me here. It's really nice to talk to you, and I'm happy to answer questions later on. You can reach our project and all this, and myself personally with this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Katrina and Ioannis. It was a lot of content, but you managed to get through it, and really interesting to hear all of the different approaches taken both within the school curriculum and teacher training in Athens, but then also how it fits in with the big data approach, and super interesting to see the comparisons between countries and also pre-COVID and during COVID comparisons. So thanks for that. And I can see we're collecting some questions from the audience in the Q&A box. So panelists, feel free to answer those, and we can also get to them later on in the Q&A segment of this webinar. Now I'm really happy to introduce the second set of presenters, Emil and Christian from Copenhagen, who will be speaking about some of Copenhagen's work with food schools. So over to you two.
Hi everybody, my name is Emil. I'm from the Municipality of Copenhagen, where I work as the food school coordinator. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our food schools in Copenhagen and how we're working with the food and food education in terms of a healthy and sustainable diet. Old school. So first, I would like to give you a little overview of the food schools in Copenhagen. On average, we serve around 5,000 daily meals on our 16 different food schools. We have 12 so-called folkeskoler, which is municipal schools. So yeah, normal school. And then we have 4 at is special schools, which is schools for kids with special needs that could be with different diagnoses. The food school have a decentral organization and production, so they are, you could say, their own business. Obviously, they are public, but they get all the funding from the meals themselves, and they hire the staff, and everything is integrated on the school. Of course, we have central support for the schools and to further the development and the targets you want to reach. And that's, for example, where I come into the picture. So we sustain the goals we have. I think what is really special about the Copenhagen model to school food is that in all our schools, we have students participating daily in the production. So in the big production kitchen, we daily have 4 to 6 kids taking part in the daily working. So they come down they have a week every year for 2 years where they are apprentices in the kitchen. And take part of everything from bread making to cooking the food to serving it and everything like that. So that's really important. Also in Copenhagen, the politicians have decided the families with a low income also pay a lower price. And I think that's important to mention, because when it comes to school food, it's very important that everyone can afford it and have the opportunity to buy school food. So we can tackle this some of these imbalances in health that we see throughout the city, depending on where you come from. 2 years ago, the city of Copenhagen passed a food policy that I'm just shortly going to mention. You can see it here in the box with the 5 main goals. And I think this is important. This is our target to reduce the climate impact on all our public meals by 25% in 2025. And to reach this target, we want to do these 5 different pins, but yeah, have a look at it. I'm not going to say too much about it. So just to go into a bit more detail with the food school. The food school is not just a kids eating food. It's we want the food schools to be part of the school's identity and put a mark on the daily life of as many aspects of the school as possible. So we reach the classroom also with food, also in other subjects than normally food related. Should really be an opportunity for kids to learn, but also to create a culture in the school which is centered around healthy eating habits and health. Because when you have these habits and when you have this culture, school life will be better. So it's sort of a whole school approach, you can say. Everyone eats together, even though you're not buying the food from the school. In Copenhagen at the food school, on average, 60% of the children eat the food, and the rest will have their own packed lunches, but they still eat together. I think this is quite a good number. In some countries, it might sound like a low number, but in Denmark, the tradition is really much having packed lunches. So it's only within the last 10 years that school food has sort of been on the rise. All the food is made with organic ingredients, or over 95 of the ingredients are. It's seasonal and it's all cooked from scratch. And then it's really important for us that the food school is a practical learning space. Bit about food education in the food school. Obviously, it's about challenging the students' taste, but I think that's why I put the question mark. It's also really important that we, as a city and as the chefs working in the kitchen, that we really listen to the kids. I think that's one of the massive tasks we need to overcome in changing the public diet, is that people are going to want to eat a lot more of beans, a lot more vegetables, instead of eating a lot of meat, which is very popular with kids and all the rest of society. But we need to change our habits. So we need to challenge, but we also need to do it in a manner which is safe and which is delicious, focused around taste. Again, apprenticeship in the kitchen makes the kids take responsibility over what happens in the school with towards food, and that makes it harder for them to, I think, to push it away and say we don't like this if you've been listened to and you take part of it. Again, integrating food and teaching is very important for us. That being chefs coming up, taking part in some classroom activities, but also for us as a city to make it possible for the schools to have the resources to combine food and teaching. And that is also, we focus a lot on the commensality around eating, having a good environment around that, and that's really important for us to have the teachers as oops, I think I went too fast. The teachers as ambassadors at the table. So for the next part of our presentation, Christian will take over and talk about how some different students have been doing research at some different food schools and doing some baseline studies of the climate impact of their food. But thanks for the opportunity to speak to you, and I hope you found it interesting. Over to you, Christian.
Yes, thank you very much, Emil, indeed. And as you mentioned, then I would like now to present some of the work that we have done together with these food schools in the Municipality of Copenhagen. So this is some work that we've done in the Climate Kick project, Shifting Urban Diets, which is led by EAT, and where we work together with 3 of the food schools on assessing and reducing their food-related greenhouse gas emissions. These schools are all public schools that have integrated food schools and is funded by the Municipality of Copenhagen. So as mentioned by Emil, they are already applying these principles originally developed by the Copenhagen House of Food and facilitated the transition to organic and seasonal food that is cooked from scratch. By applying the principles, the Municipality of Copenhagen has been able to really drive a significant change, also by specifying tender requirements and training of kitchen workers in both elder homes, kindergartens, and food schools. So Oh, was a bit too fast. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so so in the Municipality of Copenhagen, what has been done is a requirement to supply organic food is integrated in the request for tenders. So working together with the kitchens on the organic transition, the share of organic food has been increased already from 60% in 2007 to more than 90% in 2018 without increasing the costs. And also, actually following this organic transition, the kitchen workers have reported that they are more motivated to work with organic food and experienced higher of nutritional guidelines. So as mentioned by Emil, the Municipality of Copenhagen has 60 public schools, and in 15 of these schools, there is a local kitchen at the school where students are contributing actively to the preparation of lunch meals. And in the 3 schools we worked with, I believe actually 80 to 90% of the kids are actually working and eating lunch from the food schools. So what we did is, as a part of the Shifting Urban Diets project, these 3 food schools were invited to join a pilot project on implementing an adapted version of the Eat Lancet planetary health diet in the Municipality of Copenhagen. In the project, we had 3 groups of students in our climate solutions course working full-time for 10 weeks, consultants for the 3 food schools. So you could say in this way, we are kind of bringing together, both the education and the tertiary education in a combined efforts towards more sustainable and healthy diets. So the students in our course were all master students from different academic disciplines, and they were trained in consultancy, greenhouse gas accounting, and carbon footprint analysis. And then they also learned how to develop scenarios for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from food value chains. So the objectives of the project was to identify options for reducing the food-related greenhouse gas emissions by 25% in alignment with the food policy of the Municipality of Copenhagen presented by Emil. So this is actually not an easy task, since the organic transition already resulted in less meat. Because one of the requirements for this transition was that it shouldn't cost extra, which also meant that actually you had, since organic food is more expensive, you could only buy less food, and it was also an integrated part of the principles that more of the food. Students first established the food-related greenhouse gas emissions baseline for each of the food schools by applying first the Cool Food Pledge calculator, and also our own database here at the University of Copenhagen on the global warming potential of individual food items. And second, they worked together actively with the chefs at the food schools to develop an example, a 2-week menu based on the Eat Lancet planetary health diet, adapted, of course, also to the Danish dietary guidelines and also the individual preferences of each of the food schools. And finally, they also assessed the emission savings by implementing this diet. So this is just an example of one of the schools here, where you can see that actually by reducing just meat to once a week, it was possible to achieve a 22% reduction. And if you had a rule of no beef, 0 beef, it was possible to achieve 31% reduction. If we went completely over to vegetarian food, a 45% reduction was possible, and 60% reduction was possible with vegan and local food requirements. So as a part of the project, besides making this consultant report, the students also created a multimedia project. And some of the students were here really creative. And to conclude my presentation, I would like to share this example of actually a complete cartoon universe created by one of our students. The cartoon universe is called Veggie Wars and comes with a complete set of vector graphics and chew broccoli, fighting Darth T-Bone and the Egg Troopers. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks very much, Christian and Emil. It was great to hear both about kind of the innovative approach with the food schools in Copenhagen, really meaningfully involving younger students in the food curriculum and preparation, but also what Christian just spoke about with having a very meaningful way to get university students engaged with contributing to kind of the same overall topic. So that was great to see. Now we'll move on to our final presentation from London, where the leader of the project will present, but we'll also hear from some of the high school students themselves. So over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Emily. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Rachel Copus, and I am the Partnerships and Programmes Officer here at School Food Matters, a charity based in London. And I'm here today to talk to you about one of our food education programmes called Fresh Enterprise. And as Emily said, I've got some students from Northolt High who are going to talk to us a little bit later. They were involved in the programme last year. So just before we move on to talk about Fresh Enterprise, just to give you a little bit of context about what we do as a charity. School Food Matters is a charity that teaches children about food. We teach children about where food comes from, about making healthy and sustainable food choices, and hoping that we are helping to establish a blueprint for healthier living as they go through life. We aim to improve children's access to healthy, sustainable food during their time at school. And we do this by campaigning around the area of school food and school food provision. And we also provide fully funded food education programs to schools. We have a raft of programs that we offer, all of which include a growing element. So children learn about where their food comes from right from grassroots level. Cooking elements, so they learn about how to prepare and create healthy meals. And many also include an enterprise element so that children see the full cycle of food, right from growing it to selling it to seeing it on their plate. And the nice thing about the enterprise element is that any money that they raise then gets put back into school to help promote their food education programs. So just to move on to Fresh Enterprise itself. Fresh Enterprise is a program that we deliver for a company called Bellazoo. Bellazoo is basically the product of two entrepreneurial childhood friends who started off with an olive stand. And from that, the company has grown, and they now create ingredients which they provide to restaurants and also supermarkets. And as the company has grown, there was a desire to put something back into the community. And the company approached School Food Matters because they wanted to create a program, and they hoped that we could collaborate to create that. So when we got together, there were a few areas that we wanted to address. And these were the things that we discussed. So first of all, we felt that students lack knowledge of the range of careers open to them in the food industry. So although you might study food at school, didn't necessarily know what you might do with that knowledge after you left school. There were few opportunities for students to gain practical real world experience. So even if you had an interest in continuing or gaining a job in the food industry, how did you find out about that? How did you have experience of what that might be like? And there were limited opportunities to speak to people employed in the sector. So again, unless you had a contact, it was quite tricky to find out more. And the big thing that we wanted to address is that while students can learn about making a menu or about health and nutrition, there were very few opportunities for them to be creative with food. We wanted them to have the opportunity to do something really innovative and new. And that was the premise for Fresh Enterprise. So the shape of the programme that we came up with, the basic objective of the programme is that students, by the end of the programme, will have a product that they have made that is ready to go to market, to be on the supermarket shelf. So how do we get to that point? Well, first of all, students have a production tour of the Bella Zoo factory. So they come to the factory and they start off by having a tour of the factory floor. So whatever's being made that day, whether it's a pesto, whether it's lemons being bottled and jarred, or olives, they will go around the whole tour of the factory and find out exactly what's happening. They'll have that explained to them and they can ask questions. And once they've been onto the factory floor, they then have a presentation from all of the different departments within the company. So they'll learn about marketing, about sales. The buyers will talk to them about how they select their ingredients. The development kitchen will talk about combining different ingredients to make a whole new product. Right down to logistics and the IT department that supports everybody there. So by the time the students leave, they've literally had a 360-degree tour of what happens inside the building, and they've got a better knowledge of the food industry, and hopefully it will inspire them to think a little bit more carefully about what they're putting on their plates, about what constitutes their food. So once we've had the tour, it's time for sort of creative element. At this point, our chef will go into school to give the students a masterclass on learning about sauces and pastes. And she will create a sauce or a paste in front of the students. And she talks about texture, about blending, about combining, about the impact of putting different elements into that paste, what impact those ingredients have on the flavour. And once she's finished, the students then have access to a whole array of ingredients which they can combine and blend and put together to make their own unique product. And I think what's amazing, and I know Danny, Nicole and Marianne will testify later, we always think there can't be anything new. We've had so many new products out there, and Bella Zoo have a huge range of products. How can they come up with something new? And yet every year they do, they create something innovative, which is really exciting. And I think also what they learn too is that you have to be really accurate in what you're recording and what you're putting into your product and keeping notes, because ultimately, if your product is selected, that product will be scaled up on a huge level. So you have to keep a really good record of what you've done. So once they have their product, we then have to think about how that's going to be marketed. How are they going to sell their product to the team at Bella Zoo and convince them that it's a really good thing for them to make. And so we have a marketing workshop, and we go to school and we talk about the impact of colour on their label, if they have to design a label to go on the front of their product. So the impact of colour, the impact of choosing simple designs, thinking about typography, what message do they want to convey to the consumer when they're choosing that product off the shelf. And so then we have, they've got the product, they've got the label, and then they come back into Bella Zoo where they present a little sample of what they've created. And they also have to do a presentation to the Bella Zoo team. So that includes Adam and George, the founders of Bella Zoo. And they will taste what's been created, and they will choose one sauce to go into production. So that's really quite a big challenge for them. And I know that the girls today, it was particularly hard this year because they had to present it virtually. So they did a really good job to be the winners this year. So just to give you a few photos of the process, this is the production tour. One student said, I loved seeing all the machines. Can we come to Bella Zoo on another day too? This is the cooking masterclass with the students experimenting with all the ingredients. And one of them said, my favourite part was making our own paste because it was a chance to create. So really nice that they engage with that, that creative element. And this is the marketing workshop here, which, as you can see, this year we had to do virtually. But again, one of the students said, I loved learning about all the different jobs in making a product. And finally, this is the tasting panel, where, as you can see, one of their groups are ready to present their product and their label. And again, one of them said, my favourite part of the programme was selling our product to the judges. So that's the programme. Just to give you an idea of the number of students that have been involved so far, the programme started in 2016. To date, over 218 students have been on the production tour. Over 380 have benefited from the masterclass, the cooking element. Over 280 have been involved in marketing workshops, and 54 have been into Bella Zoo and done the tasting panel experience. And just to give that a little bit of context, that's 20 schools that we've worked with so far, and 4 pastes have actually gone into production. And then obviously there's the new one this year, that the girls' paste, which they're going to talk about in a minute. So that's how many children we've reached and students we've reached. But what do the schools think of the programme? Because obviously that's the most important thing, really. So there's 2 bits of teacher feedback for you here. One teacher said, this has been a really great experience for the students. It gave a better understanding of the different career opportunities, and by developing their own product, students were inspired in a way I haven't seen before. And another said, all parts of the Fresh Enterprise project are equally successful, as the programme takes the students from the raw ingredient to concept development, marketing, and finally presenting to a tasting panel. And students also gave us some feedback. One of them said, my favourite part was creating our own paste with our own choice of ingredients. We could be creative, but also make something really nice that other people like as well. Another said, I love this project. The fact that there is so much freedom, creativity and activities to do was really fun. And finally, another said, I loved learning about all the different jobs and making a product because it helps me choose what I want to do in the future. So I want to introduce you now to Mariam, Nicole and Danny. Are you there, girls?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, girls. So Mariam, Nicole and Danny from Norfolk High School, and their school was the winner last year of the programme with their lemon sweetness paste. And Mariam, would you like to tell us what you enjoyed most about the Fresh Enterprise project last year?
Yeah. So what I enjoyed most about the enterprise was that we got to experiment with lots of different ingredients that Bella Zoo provided for us. For example, olives, apricots, chilies, and preserved lemons. Because when I was younger, I used to watch MasterChef and the Great British Bake Off. I saw how the contestants would combine ingredients to create a unique flavor. So when I got to experiment myself, it was very enjoyable. As well as that, going to Bella Zoo was also a fantastic opportunity, as I got to see how the factories in the food industry work. None of us in the class had ever been to a factory before, so seeing how it works was enlightening. It was really fun seeing the big barrels of olives and all the different types and variety of machinery. It was a really good learning experience. I also really liked listening to the career options Bella Zoo talked about and how many different roles there are. Overall, it was a really enjoyable and a great way to learn more about the food industry.
That's brilliant, Mariam. Thanks ever so much for sharing that with us. Fantastic. And Danny, would you like to tell us why you think Bella Zoo chose your product? What do you think it was that made it so special?
I believe Bella Zoo chose our project because it was different. I believe this was mostly because of the preserved lemons that were used. And our product is very versatile and you can use it with many different things, such as a dip, with fish, or just added flavour. And it combined a lot of Mediterranean tastes. So I thought that's why they chose.
Fantastic. And Danny, I think I'm right in saying that it's had a little bit of an influence on your thinking about what you might do as a career in the future. Is that right?
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
I want to go into the marketing side of things, like where you go to different places and share the products that you've created.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. And finally, Nicole, would you like to tell us about whether the project's increased your interest in food and where it comes from? You there, Nicole?
When we began the process and started mixing all the Bella Zoo. Hello?
Hi, we can hear you, Nicole.
Oh, sorry.
When we began the process and started mixing all of Bellazzou's food and their flavors, it was very interesting to taste how different things tasted together. I didn't realize how many varieties of spices and flavors there are around the world. It also amazed me how adding a small amount of something, like a pinch of salt, can change the flavor of the whole paste. Something else I learned on my visit to Bellazzou was just how many roles there are in creating such products. One, the Cornwall are renowned for growing olives, and Morocco, who are commonly known for their sauce of lemons.
Fantastic, Nicole. Thanks ever so much for sharing with us, and really great, girls, that you could be with us today. I just wanted to say that we are so, hang on, sorry, I'm trying to get onto my last slide here. Just wanted to say that we're really looking forward to tasting your product when it comes out. That will be a really exciting moment. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much, Rachel, and also really fantastic that you were able to join us, Mariam, Nicole, and Danny. So now we have a nice 30 minutes or so for a question and answer session with the audience. So there are a couple questions that we've been receiving, but please do continue to use the Q&A function to bring up more so we can channel them to the right panelists. But first of all, I have a question for, I guess a general question that I'll ask each presentation to answer, and that's something about how parents have been involved. So parents are often the ones primarily responsible for providing food directly to their children. And it would be great to hear from each of your initiatives the role of parents and how they have received what you've been trying to do to shift diets and eating behaviors of young people. So maybe we'll start with Athens, with Katerina, and then go to Emil, and then Rachel, or if any of the students would like to answer as well, you're welcome to.
Yes, hello, thank you for the question. Yes, I think the role of the parents is vital towards promotion of healthy dietary habits. And for example, in our case, because we had students from primary school up to secondary school participating in the initiative, and they had to install the BigGo application in the mobile phones. You can imagine that, for example, students of the 4th primary grade are quite young, and they didn't sometimes have their own mobile phones, so they used the mobile phones of their parents. Thus, I think we somehow kept them involved and engaged in this initiative and action. And I think also, you know, the school is a system itself, and we also have the food system. And if we want to transform the food system, we need to, apart from providing education and educational activities, perhaps the operation of the school itself, it's a field that we can work on. In our case, I can think of, for example, talks, invited talks that we have with experts from the field, for example, dietitians, etc., and you know, providing briefs also to the parents to keep them informed about these initiatives and how they can cook healthy at their places and how they can prepare the snacks for students to take with them.
Thanks for that. That's interesting to hear. Emil, maybe you'd like to share how parents have responded to the work with the food schools in Copenhagen?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I think I will start in a slightly different way to say that I think that the changing the kids' habits and likability, if you could say it so, to vegetables and other climate-friendly foods, more healthy foods, is super important to change the overall change for society, because the kids will become ambassadors for this change, and hopefully they will have tried some new things in the school and found out they actually like this stuff that they haven't tried at home maybe. Then to the parents, obviously the parents play an important role. I think it's different how parents view their own role to the school. I think some parents think that they're really happy that the schools take a lot of responsibility when it comes to food and health, which means that they don't have to do so much themselves maybe. Whereas other parents would like to engage a bit more in the school activities and so on, and come to the school, thanks to chefs, get involved more in a, you could say, a communal spirit in a way. What we have been trying to do, or some schools have been trying to do, they have had community kitchens. So we use the food school facilities to have community kitchens. So once a month or once a week or whatever it is, there'll be you could come and have a communal dinner and pay a small fee for that, and so it becomes like a hub for the local society around the school, centered around food. And I think that's a really good way to showcase what we're doing in the food schools to the parents, because it's really important to get their acceptance, of course, so they buy the food, but also so they see all this stuff that happens, and hopefully they will learn and take some of these things into their own household, and and possibly change eating habits, because I think we have to take some big steps as a society all around the world to battle climate change, and that needs foremost to happen at home, whereas the public kitchens are more of a front runner. I think in Copenhagen we serve around 80,000 daily meals, so no matter how well we get at battling or making more climate-friendly food, the big step is to be taken by us as citizens.
Thanks for those insights. And maybe if Rachel, you have any insights on how parents have responded, or perhaps if any of the students would like to also share their experience with their parents as well, that could be interesting.
I think, I mean, we definitely believe that parental involvement and perception of food is really important. And I think one of the things that we've found is that perhaps at home there's a perception that children won't try different types of food, different types of vegetable. And so there's a reluctance to go over to healthy eating because there's a concern that it will be wasted and it won't be eaten. And so one of the things that we have done with some of our schools is to do family cooking sessions where a parent or a carer can come into school with the student and actually attend a cookery class. And I think what's been really interesting about that is that very often they're very surprised at when the children have been involved in preparing that food themselves, they are suddenly a lot more interested, and they will eat things that perhaps they thought they wouldn't try before. And so that's been a really interesting learning curve.
That's a great insight. And I think that relates a lot to what Emil had been talking about with the food schools as well, and making sure the meals that are being developed are something that the kids themselves are interested in eating, while also challenging them a little bit. And that leads me to another question for kind of the whole group. So I'll see if any of you volunteer to answer it first. But noting the positive climate and sustainability benefits of shifting to more plant-based foods, and also seeing the graph that Christian presented, wondering if making plant-based foods a more central part of school meals and what's being encouraged for students is a key part of all of your different sustainability initiatives, if there really is that focus on kind of plant forward. And that also relates to your point, Rachel, about maybe some kids don't like trying certain kinds of vegetables, but really working on this to shift behavior.
Well, I can give some insight. I think it's really obviously an important issue, but I think it's also really important how we talk about it, how we frame it, because I don't think we should speak so much about vegetarian, plant-based meals, so on, because for a lot of people that seems like you're taking something away from them, and that creates a lot of negativity. I think there was a big case in Lyon who just the other day announced that they were going to have meat-free school meals, and that created a big outrage. Not to go into that, but I think it's really important we focus on making healthy, delicious food that everybody enjoys to eat. And then we decide that's going to be without meat. But the consumer doesn't need don't. So it's very important we just speak about food and delicious food and on creating delicious foods, and then yeah, that should be with very little meat involvement if we are to reach all these targets. But we shouldn't frame it as taking something away from people.
That's a great point. Would any of the other speakers like to share their views on the topic?
Well, if I may, so this is one of the goals that we have in the context of FoodSHIFT 2030, so the promotion of more plant-based food. And actually what we have worked so far is some resources having to do with estimating the footprint of the different food products. I think one initial step is for students to realize the food impact, the carbon footprint, etc., all the energy that is lost in logistics. So it's an initial first step. Culturally, I would say that, well, we have meat a lot in our dietary habits, but I think, yes, there is room for improvement, or if you would like, returning back to the Mediterranean diet, where you know, there is a kind of restriction on of the meat consumption, and you know, yes, promotion of vegetables, of fruits, fresh fruits, fish, legumes. Well, I think if we return to these basic dietary patterns, I think this is ideal.
Yeah, maybe I can also comment, because in the food schools that we worked with, it was definitely seen as a positive challenge to try to see how they could reduce food emissions further, because they're already quite low. I mean, a lot of these food schools already have meat-free days in the schools, and they are also all offering both vegetarian and vegan meals in all days, you know, for vegetarian and vegan kids. But I think what is important here is that this is something that should really be adapted to the local context and the cultural context, and it's something that should be done in collaboration with the chefs, and of course to some extent also with the children in the food schools. I mean, what are the dietary preferences? I mean, for example, here in Denmark, we have quite a high dairy consumption, so and that we need to take account of. So maybe we can have a little bit less beef, for example, than, for example, advocated in the Eat Lancet recommendations. And there are also other cultural considerations. So I think it will be very important to do this adapted to the individual schools, and maybe not necessarily having a lot of vegan days, but then have less meat maybe in these days. So there are many different ways to adhere to a more sustainable, healthy diet, and reducing the meat.
And if it is okay for me to intervene for 1 second here, and I want to complement what Christian just said, that that is not my, you know, I'm invited here, and this has not been the main focus of our research per se, but I have been looking at thousands of school pictures or children pictures of meals the last 4 years, and I've done a lot of school-based eating studies in my career. And I think that one of the things that I can tell you from a personal experience, this is anecdotal, there is a lot of excellent food items for your framework and your way of thinking that are obviously eaten by the kids quite often, right? It is maybe minimizing the remaining items, meat items, that is might be a good target for that, based on also what Christian said. So you can see quite a lot of good food being eaten alongside food that, you know, can be regarded unhealthy from my perspective or my research, and also potentially less sustainable from the way you look at the issue. I think it's overlapping in a way. So that's about it from me.
Thanks for all of your insights. And I have a follow-up question that's a little bit related. So I think it's a great point to recognize kind of cultural patterns and typical meals that are eaten in different contexts, but then also back to Emil's point about how you present it and how you frame the kind of newly designed meals is quite important to avoid this feeling of, oh no, I have to give up something that I really like. But in educating children and young people about the realities of our food system, and also in promoting more sustainable eating habits, how do you avoid generating feelings of shame? And I think a lot of us, not just kids, but me, and I'm sure a lot of us in this room, often eat things that we know aren't healthy or sustainable, but we do it anyway. And especially bringing up young people and making this a big focus in education, how do you do this in a way so you don't make them feel bad when they don't necessarily adhere to these, or when they realize how broken the current food system really is? Any volunteers to take on that question?
I think it's a challenge. It's a very good question. Well, I think addressing young students, it's vital when we discuss about establishing healthy dietary habits, because they follow them during their lifetime. So I think, and what we try to do is really from even from the kindergarten age to discuss with them and implement educational activities where we want students to learn about what is healthy food, about the healthy nutriments. Of course, it's inevitable that sometimes we all eat something unhealthy, but I think also it's vital to pass them the message that there are some barriers, there are some limits in this consumption, and all this. For example, it could be snacks or something we drink that it's not 100% healthy, but we can do it following some limits. I don't know if this helps.
Can I just contribute there? I was just going to say, I think certainly from sort of our perspective, a lot of it's about, again, picking up on what Katerina was saying, accepting that sometimes we don't eat healthy things, but it's more about positivity towards the future. So yes, obviously we all we might eat something healthy sometimes, but every change that we make in the right direction is a positive change. So every time you choose a piece of fruit instead of an unhealthy snack, well, that's a great thing. So it's about sort of celebrating the positives, I think, rather than sort of feeling bad about the negatives, trying to increase those positive moments.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Keep the focus on what you can do that's good instead of shaming for what might be less than good. Another question that I have for you is...
If I may add, sorry,
oh,
Emily.
sure. Go ahead, Katerina.
And another thing, I think it's actually the promotion of physical activity. And this is something that we have been involved with BIGO. So I think it's also vital to try to promote students to be physically active, and there are different levels of course of this activeness, and unfortunately nowadays it's really typical with that we do a sedentary life, but I think it's also in our sports department really working into that. And for example, now with the COVID that the schools were closed, they were uploading periodically videos with some exercises and some hints in order to try to to trigger students not to be sitting the whole day in front of their laptops, etc.
Yeah, that's another really important component, and that actually is a great transition to what I was going to ask next, which is back to your point about COVID, where maybe people have been less physically active. And then also, Ioannis, in your presentation, you showed data comparing kind of the pre-COVID times to the during COVID times, where I thought it was really interesting to see that consumption of unhealthy snacks maybe has gone down during the pandemic, and perhaps that could be because kids are staying home more and eating fruit and healthier foods that they have on hand. But I was curious to hear from all of you what are the biggest differences you've seen in the kind of pre-COVID time compared with now, and how have you adapted, or have you noticed any different dietary habits amongst young people during that time? So Emil, for example, you described the food schools, and I know that you've been working to kind of adapt the food school mechanism in a way that's able to continue during the COVID pandemic. So maybe you'd like to start.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID pandemic has had really big influence on the food schools. I mean, obviously, when the schools have been closed, there hasn't been much activity. But at the times that the schools have been open, which has been for the most part, it has meant big changes. So normally in the food school, the kids eat together in the canteen. They will get the food on sort of you could say, sharing platters, and they share the food around. And the way we do, I also had a question about that in the Q&A, like how we tackle plate waste. And that is one of the ideas, that they can sit and share. So we don't give them too big portions, and then they can come up to the kitchen and they can ask for a bit more of what they would like more of. But in COVID times, it's not been allowed for all the kids to sit together in canteen. We have had to bring the food up to their classroom. And in most cases, that has meant that they have had like a portion of food instead. That of course means a completely different meal situation for the kids, but also it has had really big impact on the way they produce the food in the kitchen, because they have had to serve more cold food. And also in the schools where they, for example, have to prepare 500 or 600 meals, it takes a very, very long time to dish out 600 portions of food and cooking it from scratch and so on. So they have to simplify their menus in ways. But I think there's also been positives for the kids. Sometimes it seems do like to eat in the classroom, or we have tried as a municipality, we are making lots of different sustainable packaging available for them. So they have been able to maintain the same allotment of money for produce. So because if you have to buy a sustainable packaging, that could easily cost at least €1 per meal. So that would be such a big sum of money for them to take away from buying food. So we have given them extra funding for that, and also given them different types of products, so they can serve soup, they can serve salad, something for hot dishes, so on, sandwiches. So yeah, big impact.
If you want,
Thanks,
sorry.
Yeah, Ioannis, please go ahead.
No, for us, the truth is that you have to consider that our data collection capabilities, because we have been doing this remotely, they have fallen during COVID. So we do not have as much data. It would be extremely interesting to have the volume of data we had before to have it now, but this has been a challenge. But you saw some of the outcomes, and I think that the pilot analysis also in the main meals show that that the components are less ultra-processed components at home and things like that. Another interesting, there are a couple of interesting questions and considerations here. One would be like Sweden, where I'm sitting and I'm talking to you in Karolinska. Sweden is a little bit of a special case where we didn't have a guarantee for COVID, and the restaurants were still open. So we are now analyzing the data from the kids to see if they actually dropped the visit to restaurants and fast food retailers. That's what kind of interests us. And maybe stayed more at school, following what Emil, this type of strategies that are also in place here that Emil described, quite parallel, but we don't know this yet. And also I'm wondering if we would be able, I don't think we have enough data to do that, but we're trying to see if we would be able to see within the COVID period, starting from March when schools, for example, in Greece closed, towards now that the guarantee has continued, how actually this might shift within the COVID period. So maybe the COVID period itself is not a homogeneous time period, but there are variations in what the families can offer and the families are willing to monitor, or the parents are willing to monitor within the pandemic as well. These are interesting questions, and you know, these are things to be explored going forward. There are quite a lot of studies now looking backwards and asking people questions, but I think we have this comparative advantage that we have data that are being generated by the kids while this is happening. So we will see where this takes us. That's interesting. More
Great,
questions
thank you.
than answers, I know.
But great that you're collecting that data kind of as it's happening. I think that'll be very interesting to look back on as well.
Can I just say something, Emily?
Of course.
I was just going to say that I think for us, one of the things that we noticed during COVID was that initially when schools went back, there was real concern about how school food was going to be managed. There was a move over to sort of packed lunches to be eaten in the classroom because of sort of managing sort of numbers going through and that sort of thing. And I think what really became clear to us was that a lot of it was down to the head teacher and the will to kind of push it forward, because where there's been real desire to kind of keep the quality of the food going and to provide hot meals, it has been possible to do that. And I think as more schools are doing that, that encourages others to sort of be a bit more adventurous and actually push out to keep that quality going. And I guess the other way that COVID's impacted what we've noticed, of course, is just is the hunger element. And so we've been involved in providing breakfasts for children who just don't have, who haven't been receiving school food. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest impacts for us, I think.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And also, of course, very important to address the hunger issue, which is something that we haven't talked about much in this webinar, but with working with children, of course, being able to provide them with as much nourishing meals throughout the day during this period as possible is a great thing to focus on. I think we have time for one or maybe two more questions. Switching gears a little bit, there is a question about how all of your work has been either supported or hindered by any citywide policies or kind of higher level policy regulations or partnerships. So for example, there was a note that perhaps the London Food Board had some implications for how School Food Matters collaborates. So I don't know if you want to take that first, Rachel, but then also hearing how higher level policies have implemented or impacted the work in Copenhagen and Athens would be interesting.
I don't deal quite so much with the policy aspect of what we do. I'm much more sort of project based, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this question. But you know, I know that Stephanie, our CEO, she works very closely with London School Food Board, and there's a lot of discussion there, and that we sort of collaborate a lot in sort of trying to help push policy forward in terms of school food.
Great, and of course, different people have different levels of engagement with these types of policy processes as well. But maybe then, Emil, you'd like to talk a little bit more about Denmark, and Copenhagen in particular has a very ambitious food strategy. And you mentioned briefly in your presentation how the food strategy is a little bit linked to the work with the food schools, and then also tying into the work that Christian has been doing with his students. But maybe you'd like to go into a little bit more detail on that. And also, I think the slide that you showed, it might have been very small text, so I'm not sure everyone really could see what the food strategy contains.
Yes, of course. Well, yes, what is it now? Around 1.5 years ago, the city of Copenhagen passed our first food strategy. So I think that was a very good decision, and it gives an opportunity for the whole city to work with a lot more of a direction in terms of reducing the climate footprint in all sectors of the public meals, but also to take on creating change in in the citizens' lives. So it gives us sort of the backing to continue doing what we are and to really actually implementing the change. There's also been allocated quite substantial funds to make this impact happen and do it in a coordinated way. So it's not a lot of different strategies, but it's all done in a coordinated way, which is what is going to make the major change and the major difference to not having the food strategy. So I think that's it. Yeah. So that feeling of having food on the agenda. Again, we've been spending through that work. Obviously, if we are to say we are going to make 25% reduce in the climate footprint, then we also need to have these baseline studies which have been conducted, and that gives us the opportunity to have a lot of this work done, which is quite complicated and takes a lot of time and effort. So that is going to be very interesting to see what strategies we have to gain the change, or whatever you can say. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for those insights. And great to hear how the strategy has helped have a more coordinated approach to working on food throughout the city. Katrina, do you have any insights on how kind of higher level policy has impacted the work you're doing with the schools in Athens?
Well, there is available some recommendations and also some national, let's say, guides regarding healthy nutrition. But actually, you know, in public schools, well, there's the school canteen and they sell some snacks, etc., for the students. There is a tender, you know, procedure there. So, well, typically these recommendations are followed, but then again, it's a matter of cost and things like that, and who actually undertakes the operation of these canteens. In our case, because we do have a school canteen as well, the restaurant, the school restaurant, and students that eat there, you know, it's a matter of whether they would like to do so. We consider a lot of these national guidelines and also the meals that are offered are supervised by dietary experts from the Housekeeping University. It has a long-standing experience in dietary and nutrition. So we try to, you know, follow all this healthy and the Mediterranean healthy lifestyle in this in the meals that we offer. But I think we are a little bit behind towards setting, you know, food policy strategies in a broader, you know, context.
Thanks for sharing. So I see we have just under 5 minutes left in this webinar. So I'll start wrapping up, and then please do, panelists, if you're able to, please do continue answering questions directly in the Q&A section as well. So we'll try to answer as many in some form as we can before we close. But I'll just share a few of the main insights that we've heard and then give you some next steps about the FoodSHIFT project. So if Stephanie, you would like to put on the next slide. But essentially, it's been great hearing all these different examples of how children are being engaged in food-related education. So we've heard about working to integrate food into the curriculum in the school in Athens, with including a focus on school waste or food waste, and also training the teachers. And heard some about how that's linked with the big data project that Ayanis presented, which involves engaging kind of citizen science from all across Europe. We've also heard about the innovative approach with the food schools in Copenhagen that's directly involving younger students in the meal planning and preparation, but then also the work that Christian described, bringing in university students to really apply their learnings on a real case basis. And then we also heard a really fascinating example of kind of real world application and learning with the Fresh Enterprise project in the UK, showing how high school students can get really hands-on with all of the different components of food production and developing new recipes and products, but then also learning about the design and the marketing elements as well. So can provide more insights into career opportunities in the future. So I think this was a great diversity of projects and really interesting to hear all of your experiences. So just moving forward, we will continue with this FoodSHIFT webinar series. This is one of several webinars that have already happened. So please do stay tuned for upcoming webinars. In addition to the webinar series, we will be holding a FoodSHIFT 2030 Stakeholder Innovation Conference in Barcelona in connection with the World Food Day on October 21st, and also the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact annual gathering from October 19th through 21st. So keep an eye on the FoodSHIFT 2030 website, which is listed here on the screen to see more details about these upcoming events. And also please do feel free to follow FoodSHIFT or interact with FoodSHIFT on social media. So in the last couple of minutes, I'll stop talking and we'll show a short film about the FoodSHIFT project that was produced at the first FoodSHIFT gathering in Copenhagen almost exactly a year ago. And you can stay and watch the film if you'd like. You can also have these last few minutes to wrap up any chat or Q&A discussions that you're part of. And thanks very much for joining, and we look forward to staying connected.
FoodSHIFT 2030 is an EU Horizon 2020 project which is running over 4 years and is involving 31 partners from in total 12 countries.
The objectives of FoodSHIFT 2030